Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be digging into this.
Today, our mission is really about providing a shortcut, a way into the complex thinking behind modern military operations.
Yeah, we're looking at advanced doctrine, the playbook, essentially.
Exactly. How major forces plan, how they execute, how they synchronize these massive, often multi-domain operations.
And it's not just about lists and definitions. We're aiming to understand the structure of that thinking, the intellectual framework.
Where does this thinking come from?
Well, for this deep dive, we're drawing exclusively from key doctrinal publications, specifically Field Manual 390, Tactics, and Field Manual 50, Planning and Orders Production.
So authoritative sources.
The foundation. We want to synthesize the core insights, really get at how leaders turn visualization into action.
And it's interesting, when you look at the structure, planning doesn't just start with, moving pieces on a board.
Not at all. It starts much broader.
It begins with this deep analysis of the entire context, which brings us nicely to part one, setting that foundation, understanding the environment.
Absolutely. The very first step, the essential step for any commander, is analyzing the operational environment.
And how does the doctrine define that?
Field Manual 390 calls it the totality of factors and conditions that impact an operation. Everything from, the physical terrain to political realities, economic factors, information, everything.
So it's holistic.
It has to be. And the goal isn't just observation, it's anticipatory. This analysis lets leaders spot problems before they happen, anticipate outcomes, understand how friendly actions, enemy actions, even neutral parties might affect the end state.
That sounds incredibly complex, especially now. That environment, it stretches way beyond the physical battlefield.
Oh, definitely. We're firmly in a multi-domain world now.
So multi-domain operations.
That's the reality. The doctrine, Field Manual 390 specifically, makes it very clear. All Army operations are multi-domain by nature.
How so?
Because Army forces operate across land, maritime, air, space, cyberspace, and they support and are supported by the joint force in all those domains.
So it's about interdependence.
Exactly. That interdependence is crucial. You simply can't separate the ground fight from the information fight anymore, or maneuver from satellite support, or cyber effects.
It's not just a trendy term then.
No. It's fundamental. And Field Manual 390 highlights that this is used deliberately. You impose multiple dilemmas on the enemy simultaneously by operating across domains.
Deny them sanctuaries anywhere.
Pretty much. You force them to spread their resources, their attention. You disrupt their own synchronization until, hopefully, it breaks down.
Okay, so you've analyzed this vast multi-domain environment. How do commanders then focus on what matters for their specific mission?
That's where the core mission variables come in. They provide a standard framework, categories of specific information leaders need to really achieve situational understanding for their task.
We know the classic ones: mission, enemy, terrain and weather, troops and support available, time available.
The old MTTT. But it's expanded. Crucially, we now integrate civil considerations and informational considerations.
MTTCI, then.
Right. Adding those last two acknowledges that warfare today, well, it's rarely just military versus military. The human and information dimensions are vital.
Let's zoom in on civil considerations. This feels like where the doctrine gets very human.
It really does. It's not just about maps and enemy locations. It's about sociology, infrastructure, population dynamics.
How deep does it go?
Very deep. Field Manual 50 talks about analyzing population behaviors. Attitudes: are they hostile, friendly, neutral? How might they react to military actions? And it uses a framework for this.
The ASCOPE acronym.
Exactly, ASCOPE. Areas, structures, capabilities, organizations, people, and events. It gives structure to that complex civil analysis.
What about structures and capabilities? Deciding whether to, say, use or even destroy civilian infrastructure. That sounds like walking a very fine line, ethically and strategically.
It's a huge planning factor.
Yeah.
Field Manual 50 provides guidance here. When looking at capabilities, it says prioritize those needed to save, sustain, or enhance life for the population. And for structures like a hospital, power plant, a key bridge, commanders must weigh the military benefit against the cost to the community. Using civilian infrastructure often competes directly with civilian needs. That calculation is part of the commander's responsibility.
So winning the battle but losing the societal fabric isn't really winning.
You could argue it's a strategic failure. Exactly. Civil considerations are absolutely inseparable from mission success.
Okay. Now, shifting gears slightly, how does the commander think about organizing their own forces? We talk about classifying operations by purpose.
Right. Field Manual 390 lays out this tactical taxonomy. We arrange our forces based on their assigned purpose, broadly, offensive, defensive, and enabling operations.
Offense and defense seems straightforward. But enabling operation, that sounds important, but maybe less visible.
It's crucial background work. Enabling operation sets the conditions needed for the main mission to succeed. But, and this is key, it doesn't directly achieve the commander's end state itself. It's not decisive on its own.
Like what? Security? Logistics?
Exactly. Security operations, reconnaissance, bridging operations, maybe maintaining information superiority. Things that allow the main combat force to do its job. The main effort might fail without them, but they are fundamentally supportive.
And all these operations, offensive, defensive, enabling, they rely on integrating fundamental capabilities.
The 6 warfighting functions. These are the core systems commanders have to constantly synchronize.
Let's list them.
Command and control, movement and maneuver, intelligence, fires, sustainment, and protection.
Just listing them doesn't capture the difficulty, does it?
Not even close. The real challenge is the synchronization.
Yeah.
It's not just doing 6 things at once. It's making sure the intelligence gathered informs the fires plan, which protects the movement and maneuver, while sustainment keeps everything moving, and command and control sets the tempo and holds it all together.
And if that synchronization breaks down...
That's where operations fail. Fires hitting friendlies, maneuver grinding to a halt because sustainment lagged. It's a continuous dynamic integration that's needed.
Which perfectly sets the stage for part 2. Let's dive into the actual how, the art and science of planning, controlling, and synchronizing these forces. We're talking about the central planning methodology for units with staff.
The military decision-making process, or MDMP.
Right, the military decision-making process.
Field Manual 50 defines it as the iterative planning methodology these units use.
Right.
It's how they understand the situation, develop courses of action, and ultimately produce an operation plan or order. It's a rigorous 7-step sequence designed to ensure nothing critical gets missed.
But the staff isn't just locked in a room going through those 7 steps in isolation, right? There are other things happening simultaneously.
Absolutely critical point. There are integrating processes running concurrently, feeding into and drawing from the military decision-making process.
Such as?
Well, there are 5 key ones. Intelligence preparation of the operational environment, information collection, targeting, risk management, and knowledge management.
So, for instance, the intelligence team is constantly updating the picture.
Exactly. They're doing intelligence preparation of the operational environment alongside every step of the military decision-making process. They aren't waiting for step 7. They're ensuring the commander's understanding of the enemy and environment is current throughout. Targeting is happening concurrently. Risk is being managed. It's all integrated.
Planning seems so detailed, almost like a science. But the doctrine itself warns against being too rigid. What are some of the major planning pitfalls commanders need to avoid?
Oh, the manuals are very clear on this because history shows us what happens when you fall into these traps.
Yeah.
A huge one is the lack of commander involvement.
How so?
The plan is the commander's visualization made tangible. If the commander just delegates it entirely, treats it like a staff chore, they lose that vital connection between their intent and the final plan. It risks becoming bureaucratic and inflexible.
So the commander needs to be driving it, not just approving it.
Driving it, shaping it, imbuing it with their intent. Exactly. Other pitfalls. Failing to make timely decisions, paralysis by analysis. Trying to plan in too much detail.
Which guarantees it's wrong the moment the first shot is fired.
Pretty much. And maybe the most dangerous. Using the plan as a script for execution. The plan is a guide, a framework for dealing with what you expect. But execution demands constant adaptation.
Okay, so before execution, you need the right force package. Let's talk about task organizing.
Task organizing is essentially designing a force for a specific job.
Right.
You tailor the size, the composition, the mix of capabilities for a unique task or mission.
Customizing the team.
Right. And Field Manual 50 stresses that commanders need to visualize the capabilities down to 2 echelons below them. Do I need engineers here? Cyber assets there? Aviation support? It's about ensuring you have overwhelming strength where it matters most.
And once you have that force, you need to prioritize, weighting the effort. How does doctrine structure that?
Commanders set priorities by designating units in 3 categories. First, the main effort. This is the subordinate unit whose mission is absolutely critical to the overall success at that specific time.
Gets first dibs on resources.
Everything. Priority of fires, sustainment, support. Because if the main effort fails, the whole operation likely fails. Then you have supporting efforts. Their missions directly enable the main effort's success.
Setting the conditions.
Precisely. And finally, the reserve. This is a portion of the force deliberately withheld from action initially.
Why hold forces back?
Flexibility. The reserve is there for the unexpected, to exploit a sudden opportunity, counter an unforeseen enemy threat, or add weight at the decisive point. It's the commander's insurance policy, kept ready for a decisive move. The size depends on the uncertainty of the situation.
And you need to position it carefully.
Oh, yes. Consider its survivability, its mobility.
Yeah.
You're essentially betting that the enemy won't do exactly what you predicted, and you need that uncommitted force ready to react fast when they don't.
All this planning culminates in the operation plan or order. At its heart is the mission statement. Get this wrong and everything else falters.
Absolutely fundamental.
What are the non-negotiables for a good mission statement?
Field Manual 5.0 is crystal clear. It has to state the action and the reason. It must answer 5 questions. Who is doing it? What is the essential task? When does it happen? Where does it happen? And critically, why the purpose?
That why seems crucial.
It's everything. If the why is missing or unclear, subordinate leaders can't exercise initiative effectively because they don't fully grasp the overall intent. It connects their action to the bigger picture.
And that why leads directly to the idea of nesting, right? Making sure each unit's plan fits into the higher plan.
Exactly. Nesting ensures vertical integration, coherence. Field Manual 5.0 explains that a unit's mission and concept of operations have to align perfectly with their higher headquarters plan.
How do they visualize that?
Often with a nesting diagram. It shows how the main effort of, say, a battalion directly supports the main effort of its brigade, which in turn supports the division's main effort. If a brigade's task doesn't directly enable the division's goal, it's potentially a wasted effort. It has to nest.
Planning also involves things you can't do, or things you assume will happen. Constraints and assumptions. What's the difference?
Good distinction to make. A constraint is a restriction placed on the command by a higher command. It dictates something you must do or cannot do. It limits your freedom of action.
Like, do not cross this line before this time.
Exactly. It's a directive, often found in paragraph 3 of the order. An assumption, on the other hand, is about the future. It's a supposition about the current situation or future events, conditions you expect to exist, but over which you have no real control. Like assuming a key bridge will remain intact.
And you need to be careful with assumptions.
Very careful. Field Manual 5.0 emphasizes they must be logical, realistic, and likely true. Because the more assumptions your plan relies on, the riskier it becomes. If even one key assumption proves false, the whole plan might unravel.
So constraints limit options, assumptions increase risk. Okay, now we shift to execution. The plan meets reality, and reality usually wins the first contact. Doctrine needs agility.
And that's where the rapid decision-making and synchronization process comes in, or RDSP.
Okay, the rapid decision-making and synchronization process. What is it for?
It's the tool for short-range planning during execution. When things change, when opportunities or threats pop up that weren't fully anticipated in the original plan, it's a quick 5-step process.
Faster than the full military decision-making process.
Much faster. It's designed to respond rapidly based on the existing order, without needing to go back to square one. Think of the military decision-making process as deliberate planning. The rapid decision-making and synchronization process is like rapid response.
And when changes are needed during execution, are all changes equal? Doctrine distinguishes between types of decisions.
Yes, 2 key types. An execution decision involves minor modifications to the current plan. Maybe you hit a pre-planned decision point, conditions are met, and you execute the planned branch. It's within the existing framework.
A small adjustment.
Right. But an adjustment decision is much bigger. This means you're significantly modifying the current course of action because something substantial has changed. The enemy did something totally unexpected. Maybe a friendly capability failed.
So it requires more than just a small tweak.
Definitely. Field Manual 5.0 notes an adjustment decision is significant enough that it usually requires the staff to resynchronize the whole operation, maybe even triggering the need to consider reframing.
Reframing, that sounds fundamental, like questioning the entire premise.
That's exactly what it is. It's the highest level of adaptation. It happens when conditions change so drastically that the original understanding of the problem, the initial visualization, might be invalid.
What triggers that? How do you know you need to reframe?
Commanders and staffs develop reframing indicators during planning. These are pre-identified conditions, things that, if they occur, signal a major shift. Field Manual 5.0 gives an example like maybe a major regional power suddenly joins the enemy. That fundamentally changes the strategic landscape.
So you don't just adjust the plan then, you might need a whole new plan.
You might need a whole new understanding of the problem first. You have to question the initial assumptions, the constraints, maybe even the mission itself. It's a recognition that the reality on the ground is radically different from what you planned for.
Now, the military decision-making process is for units with staffs. What about smaller units, company level and below?
They use troop leading procedures, or TLP.
Troop leading procedures, how are they different?
Field Manual 5.0 outlines them as a dynamic 8-step process. The key difference is that these small units lack formal staffs. So the planning responsibility falls almost entirely on the commander or leader.
More pressure on the leader then.
Absolutely. They have to rapidly receive the mission, issue warnings, make a tentative plan, initiate movement, conduct reconnaissance, complete the plan, issue the order, and then supervise and refine. It's designed for speed and leader-centric planning.
And that final step, supervise and refine, involves rehearsals. Why are they so critical?
Rehearsals are vital. They're where you practice key tasks, identify weaknesses or friction points in the plan, synchronize actions between elements, and build confidence before making contact with the enemy.
What if time is really tight? Are there different types?
Yes, several times. But Field Manual 5.0 points out that when time is severely limited, the map rehearsal is often the best bet.
Why a map rehearsal?
It requires minimal resources, just mats, overlays, maybe markers.
Yeah.
Leaders gather around the map and talk through the plan step by step, synchronizing their actions over the terrain representation. It ensures everyone understands the concept of operations quickly without needing troops or elaborate setups.
Okay, let's move into the thick of it. Part 3. Forms of maneuver and tactical execution. When we talk offense, it's about gaining advantage through positioning. Let's contrast two key forms, envelopment and turning movement. They sound similar.
They do, but the intent and scale are different. An envelopment involves attacking an exposed or assailable enemy flank. The goal is to avoid their main defenses, hit them where they're weak, and force them to fight in two directions at once.
So you find a weak spot on the side and hit it.
Right. And crucially, the enveloping force intends to engage the enemy, often fixing them with one force, while the main effort executes the envelopment to destroy them in their current positions.
Okay, so engagement on the flank is key. How does a turning movement differ?
A turning movement is more ambitious, usually requires larger forces. Here, the attacking force tries to avoid the enemy's main defenses altogether. It maneuvers deep into the enemy's rear area to seize objectives back there that will force the enemy to abandon their current positions.
So you're not trying to fight them where they are, but make their position untenable.
Exactly. You turn them out of their defenses by threatening their supply lines, their command centers, their escape routes. The goal is to force displacement, not necessarily engage them head-on initially. Field Manual 390 notes this typically requires divisions or larger units because you need the resources to operate independently, way out there in the enemy rear, beyond easy support.
So, envelopment hits the flank to fight. Turning movement goes deep to force a move. What about the direct approach, the frontal attack?
The frontal attack. It's generally the least preferred form of maneuver.
Why is that?
Because you're hitting the enemy where they are strongest, right into their prepared defenses and concentrated firepower. Doctrine says it's usually only done under specific conditions.
Such as?
If there are no assailable flanks available, or if the attacking force possesses truly overwhelming combat power relative to the defender, ensuring a quick breach. Or sometimes if you absolutely need to fix the enemy in place to prevent them from moving, perhaps to enable a different operation elsewhere. It maintains pressure across the front.
Okay. Once maneuver puts you in position, how do you achieve victory? The doctrine talks about fix and finish.
This is a core tactical concept in Field Manual 390. It's a sequence. First, you fix the enemy. This means using one part of your force, often through fires or a supporting attack, to prevent the enemy from moving any part of their force. You pin them down.
Stop them from repositioning or escaping?
Precisely. This gives your main effort the freedom to maneuver. Once the enemy is fixed, you can finish the enemy. This requires maintaining momentum, massing overwhelming combat power fires, and maneuver onto the fixed enemy element to destroy it or force its surrender.
And the main effort does the finishing?
Typically, yes. The main effort is allocated the resources and task to deliver that decisive blow against the fixed enemy force.
It sounds like a very coordinated dance. What happens when units make unexpected contact? Actions on contact?
It depends on the echelon. Field Manual 390 explains that for smaller units like companies and platoons, they have drills. They can quickly develop the situation, maybe conduct a hasty attack, defend, or bypass, and continue their mission.
They react quickly.
Right. But for larger units, battalions and above, stumbling into unexpected contact is much more dangerous because synchronization is harder. They often need to execute that rapid decision-making and synchronization process we discussed, or even a hasty military decision-making process session, to quickly coordinate fires, maneuver, intelligence gathering, and figure out the best response without getting decisively engaged in pieces.
And thinking back to multi-domain operations, is there a principle for making that initial contact?
Yes, a key tenet mentioned in Field Manual 390 is to make contact with the smallest element possible.
Why small?
To preserve the combat power of the main body. Let the smallest possible element, a scout team, maybe a platoon, make initial contact, trigger the actions on contact process, develop the situation, figure out what the enemy is doing, without prematurely committing your main fighting force.
Let's touch on a specific type of movement to contact, search and attack. When is this used?
Search and attack is often used when the enemy isn't concentrated, when they're dispersed, maybe in irregular warfare situations or complex terrain where you can't easily target them with fires or find them with standard reconnaissance.
So you have to physically find them.
Essentially, yes. It involves units, often dismounted infantry because they can move through difficult terrain, conducting coordinated sweeps through an area to find and then attack dispersed enemy forces. Armored or striker units might support them, providing mobility or fire support.
Finally, in the offense, if the enemy breaks and runs, you have pursuits. The goal is destruction. How are forces organized for that?
A pursuit aims to destroy a retreating enemy force before they can escape or reorganize. Commanders typically assign forces distinct roles. You have a direct pressure force.
What's their job?
Their job is to stay right on the enemy's main body, maintain contact, harass them, keep them moving, prevent them from disengaging cleanly or setting up a hasty defense.
Keep the pressure on.
Exactly. Then you have an encircling force. This force needs mobility. It maneuvers rapidly, often on parallel routes, trying to get ahead of the retreating enemy, cut off their escape routes, block them, and ultimately trap them between itself and the direct pressure force.
Like pincers closing.
That's the idea. You might also have follow and support forces to secure areas, manage prisoners, things like that.
Is encirclement always the goal? What if you can't get behind them?
Sometimes you have to resort to a frontal pursuit. This is less ideal. It happens when you lack the mobility advantage needed to get an encircling force behind the enemy quickly enough. Or perhaps you can't sustain that encircling force logistically if it gets too far out, so you basically just chase them directly from behind.
A less decisive option, then.
Generally, yes. It allows the enemy more opportunity to conduct delaying actions or escape.
Okay, let's shift from offense and pursuit to the defense. Part 4. Defensive and enabling operations. First point. Defense isn't passive waiting, is it?
Absolutely not. That's a critical misunderstanding. Field Manual 390 is emphatic. A defending force doesn't just sit there. It's aggressive. It actively seeks to attrite the enemy, disrupt their attack, weaken them before the main fight. It uses maneuver, obstacles, fires, security forces out front, always looking for chances to regain the initiative and transition back to the offense.
Let's define the two main types. First, the area defense. What's its focus?
The area defense primarily concentrates on denying the enemy access to designated terrain for a specific time. The key is retaining the terrain itself, usually by organizing the defense in depth on ground that offers advantages.
So holding ground is the priority.
Yes, more so than destroying the attacking force outright, although you certainly try to do that too. The main effort in an area defense is often focused on massing fires into prepared engagement areas where you want to destroy the enemy. You might have small counterattacks, but the focus is holding key terrain.
And within area defense, there's a specific technique, often used by smaller units, the reverse slope defense. Sounds counterintuitive.
It does, but it can be very effective, especially for battalion and below. You organize your main defensive positions on the side of a hill or ridge away from the enemy, the reverse slope.
Why do that? You can't see the enemy coming.
Exactly. And they can't see you. It masks your positions from direct observation and direct fire until the very last moment. The enemy advances up the forward slope, maybe crests the hill, thinking they know where you are, and then suddenly encounters your main defense where they didn't expect it, often separated from their supporting fires. It can achieve complete tactical surprise.
Trading observation for surprise and protection.
That's the trade-off. You usually have observation posts or security elements forward to watch the enemy approach and trigger the engagement.
Okay, now contrast the area defense with the mobile defense. This sounds very different.
High risk.
Potentially high risk, high reward. The mobile defense focuses almost entirely on the destruction of the attacking enemy force, not on retaining terrain.
How does it achieve that? By deliberately allowing the enemy to advance into a chosen area, essentially luring them into a trap where a powerful reserve striking force can launch a decisive counterattack to destroy them.
So you give up ground intentionally.
Yes, and that's the hard part, psychologically and operationally. You have to be willing to let the enemy penetrate, sometimes quite deeply, while your fixing force channels them and absorbs the initial blow. The success hinges entirely on that striking force.
What is the striking force?
It's the dedicated counterattack force. Field Manual 390 says it's constituted with the bulk of the available combat power. It's held back, concealed, until the perfect moment when the enemy is exposed, overextended, or enters the designated kill zone. Then it strikes decisively.
Requires a lot of space, I imagine.
Absolutely. Mobile defense needs considerable depth to allow the enemy to penetrate, to shape the penetration, and to give the striking force room to maneuver for the counterattack. Patience and precise timing are everything.
Let's talk about moving backwards under pressure. Retrograde operations. Specifically, the delay. How can a commander direct this? Are there different types?
Yes, and the distinction is critical for the unit executing it. Field Manual 390 describes two main methods. First, a commander can order a delay within the assigned area. Here, the primary consideration is preserving the force. The unit trades space for time, avoids decisive engagement, and displaces based on preset conditions or enemy actions, prioritizing getting away intact.
Okay, save the force. What's the second type?
The second is a delay forward of a specified line for a specified time. This is much more demanding. Here, accomplishing the mission, holding that line until that time outweighs force preservation. The delaying force might have to hold its ground, potentially taking heavy losses, until ordered to withdraw, regardless of the tactical situation. The mission comes first.
That requires extreme clarity in the order.
Absolutely essential. The troops need to know which type of delay it is.
When a force conducts a withdrawal, especially under pressure, how do they prevent the enemy from just rolling over them as they pull back? Deception seems key.
Deception is vital. One technique mentioned in Field Manual 390 is using a detachment left in contact, or DLIC.
A detachment left in contact, what does it do?
It's a smaller element left behind temporarily as the main body withdraws. Its job is to simulate the continued presence of the main force, maybe by maintaining radio traffic, firing sporadically, conducting small patrols just enough to deceive the enemy and prevent immediate pursuit. Buys time for the main body to break contact cleanly.
A rear guard action, essentially.
A specialized kind of rear guard focused on deception during the initial phase of withdrawal.
If a unit takes significant losses, it might need reconstitution. What does that involve?
Reconstitution is a planned process to restore a unit's combat effectiveness. Field Manual 390 identifies two main parts: reorganization and regeneration.
What's the difference?
Reorganization usually happens first, often during a lull in combat. It involves shuffling remaining personnel and equipment. Surviving leaders take charge of combined elements, crews are cross-leveled. It's making the best of what you have left immediately. Regeneration is more extensive, requiring time out of contact. It involves rebuilding the unit more formally, receiving replacements, personnel and equipment, retraining if needed, essentially bringing the unit back up to a specified strength level.
So, patching things up versus rebuilding.
That's a good way to put it.
Let's quickly cover some key protection and sustainment concepts. Survivability operations. What's the aim?
Survivability operations are all about using the physical environment to protect the force. Digging fighting positions for cover, using camouflage and concealment to hide from observation, dispersing assets. The goal is to allow forces to avoid or withstand enemy attacks while still being able to perform their mission.
And movement helps.
Big time. Moving frequently, especially for things like command posts or artillery, and being able to establish survivability positions quickly are key techniques mentioned in Field Manual 390. Don't be a static target.
What about protecting information?
That's Operation Security, or OPSEC. Operation Security is about identifying your own critical information, things the enemy could use against you if they knew it, and controlling indicators of your actions. You analyze what the enemy might know, deny them critical information, and use countermeasures like deception to protect your plans and vulnerabilities.
Thinking about keeping the force supplied sustainment, there's a difference between basic load and combat loads.
Yes, an important one for planning. The basic load is the standard quantity of supplies, ammo, fuel, etc., that a unit is supposed to have on hand according to its organizational structure. It's the default amount.
And combat loads.
Combat loads are different. They are the minimum mission essential supplies and equipment determined by the commander for a specific mission. Field Manual 390 points out these are not standardized. They depend entirely on the commander's assessment of the mission duration, intensity, enemy terrain. Maybe you need extra ammo, but less fuel for a short, intense defense.
Commander's judgment call based on the specifics.
Exactly.
One last item here. Detainee operations. They start right at the point of capture. What immediate actions must soldiers take?
Immediately upon capture, soldiers need to apply the 5 S's and T technique. That stands for search, silence, segregate, safeguard, speed, and tag.
Search, silence, segregate, safeguard, speed, tag. Why those steps?
It's a structured approach for safety and intelligence. Search for weapons or intel. Silence to prevent communication or alarms. Segregate different categories, officers, civilians, etc. Safeguard them humanely but securely. Speed them to the rear, away from the front line, to designated collection points. And tag them properly for accountability and information gathering. It ensures humane treatment while maximizing security and potential intelligence gain.
Okay, we've covered planning frameworks, tactical actions, defense, sustainment. Now, part 5. How do we tie it all together on the ground? We need the tools for control and synchronization. Control measures.
These are absolutely the language of command and control. They're the symbols and lines on the map, the instructions and the order, that regulate forces, coordinate the warfighting functions, and critically, help prevent fratricide-friendly fire incidents.
Making the plan executable and understandable.
Precisely. Field Manual 390 states they assign responsibilities, coordinate actions in time and space, and deconflict activities.
Let's start with the biggest one, the area of operations.
The area of operations, or AO, is the geographical box assigned to a commander. It's defined by boundaries forward, rear, left, right. The commander is responsible for everything that happens within that box. It needs to be large enough for them to accomplish their mission and protect their forces.
Units operate within their assigned area of operations.
Right. It prevents units from interfering with each other and focuses their efforts.
What about lines used for controlling movement? Phase lines.
Phase lines, or PLs, are easily recognizable features on the ground. A road, a river, a ridge line, used to control the forward movement of units. Commanders use them to track progress and synchronize operations.
Do units stop at phase lines?
Generally, no. Field Manual 390 is specific. Units normally report crossing phase lines to higher headquarters, but they don't halt unless explicitly told to. They're control measures, not stop signs.
Okay. What about the battle handover line? Sounds like a critical transition point.
It absolutely is. A battle handover line, or BHL, is a designated phase line where responsibility for the fight transfers between two units, typically a stationary force and a moving force, like during a passage of lines.
Who decides where it is?
The higher commander establishes it, usually after coordinating with both subordinate commanders involved. It needs to be positioned so the stationary unit's direct fires can support the moving unit effectively until the handover responsibility is complete and secure.
Very precise coordination needed there. How about controlling fires? What's a target reference point?
A target reference point, or TRP, is an easily recognizable point on the ground. Maybe a distinct building, a road junction, a unique tree that's pre-identified.
What's it used for?
It's used to quickly orient direct fire weapons and rapidly acquire targets. Maneuver leaders, especially at lower echelons, use target reference points to define sectors of fire for their units or individual weapons, making fire commands fast and unambiguous. Fire TRP-1.
And in the defense, perhaps the most critical fire control measure is the final protective fire.
The final protective fire, or FPF, is a prearranged barrier of fire, usually machine guns and mortars. It's designed to be immediately available to impede the enemy's final assault right on top of the defensive positions. It's the last line of fire defense.
Can units have multiple final protective fires?
No. And this is critical. Field Manual 390 mandates that a commander can only assign each firing unit, like a mortar platoon or artillery battery, a single final protective fire. It represents the absolute final priority for that weapons system, engaged only when the defense is in immediate danger of being overrun.
Okay, shifting to intelligence and targeting controls. We hear about named areas of interest and target areas of interest. What's the difference?
It's about the transition from intelligence gathering to action. A named area of interest, or NAI, is a geographical area where you expect to collect information that will answer a key intelligence question like, which route will the enemy likely take? It's focused on finding or confirming enemy activity or intentions.
And a target area of interest.
A target area of interest, or TAI, is often a named area of interest that gets upgraded, essentially. It's an area where you've confirmed enemy activity, and critically, you have assets available, artillery, aircraft, cyber effects that can engage the enemy in that area. It becomes a focus for targeting, allowing commanders to mass effects.
So, named area of interest is about find. Target area of interest is about fight.
That's a good simplification, yes.
The targeting process itself, how is that structured?
Field Manual 5.0 describes it as having 4 functions: decide, detect, deliver, and assess. Decide what targets need to be engaged to support the commander's plan. Detect those targets on the battlefield. Deliver the appropriate effects, lethal or non-lethal. And assess the results. Did you achieve the desired effect? It's a continuous cycle integrated throughout planning and execution.
And sometimes, even if a target is valid, there are restrictions, the restricted target list.
Exactly. A restricted target list, or RTL, includes targets that are valid militarily but have specific restrictions placed on engaging them.
Why restrict them?
Could be for various reasons. Maybe concerns about collateral damage to civilians or protected sites. Maybe rules of engagement prohibit striking it at certain times, like daytime. Maybe you need to preserve specific types of ammunition for later, like for those final protective fires we mentioned. These restrictions are non-negotiable and must be followed.
Okay, finally, let's talk about the tools used during execution to manage all this. Linking the plan to the dynamic reality, the decision support template, and decision support matrix.
These are tools designed to help commanders and staffs make timely decisions during the fight. The Decision Support Template, or DST, is the visual piece. It's usually an overlay for a map.
What does it show?
It graphically depicts key decision points identified during planning, relates them to enemy actions, often tied to named areas of interest or target areas of interest, shows relevant timelines, and links them to planned friendly actions or responses. It shows where and roughly when decisions are likely needed.
And the decision support matrix?
The Decision Support Matrix, or DSM, is the written companion piece. It's a table that details the information associated with each decision point shown on the template. It lists the decision point, the specific decision that needs to be made there, the conditions or enemy actions that would trigger that decision, often linked to intelligence requirements, like the commander's critical information requirements, and the planned actions or orders to be executed once the decision is made.
So, together, they provide a pre-planned script for anticipated decisions.
Sort of a pre-approved menu of options tied to specific battlefield triggers. It allows for faster, more synchronized responses when those anticipated situations arise.
Wow. We've covered a huge amount of ground. From the broadest strategic thinking about the operational environment, all the way down to specific lines on a map and pre-planned decisions.
It's a vast, interconnected system of thought and action.
And the big takeaway seems to be this constant blend, doesn't it? You need the rigorous, formal processes, the military decision-making process, troop leading procedures, all the control measures, but you absolutely need tactical creativity and agility alongside it.
That blend is everything. Success really hinges on that combination. You need meticulous planning up front, identifying risks, assumptions, constraints, requirements. But you also need the mental flexibility and the processes, like the rapid decision-making and synchronization process, to adapt when things inevitably go sideways.
And the wisdom to know when a small adaptation isn't enough, when you need to fundamentally reframe your understanding.
Exactly. The process provides the structure, the commander's judgment, and intuition. The art provides the essential flexibility and adaptation.
That structure, that process, it brings immense power, the ability to synchronize incredible combat power. But it also brings immense responsibility.
Without a doubt.
We focused a lot on synchronizing lethal effects, fires, and maneuver. But the doctrine itself highlights the ethical and legal complexities, especially when operating among civilians or dealing with captured personnel.
Absolutely. Doctrine isn't just about tactics. It embeds legal and ethical considerations. Think about denial operations. For example, actions to prevent the enemy from using resources or facilities, maybe by destroying them.
That sounds like it could easily harm civilians or violate laws of war.
It carries huge risks. That's why Field Manual 390 explicitly states commanders must involve their legal advisors and civil affairs teams when planning denial operations. They have to ensure compliance with international law, the rules of engagement, and consider the second and third order effects on the population and environment.
And the same applies to how soldiers interact with civilians generally or handle detainees, right?
Constantly reinforced. Commanders are responsible for protecting their force, yes, but also for ensuring all actions comply with the law and ethical standards. how soldiers treat people, even small interactions, can have huge strategic consequences, especially with global media and adversaries looking to exploit any misstep.
So really understanding this advanced playbook, from the details of a mission statement to the legal constraints on targeting or denial operations, it's not just about knowing the rules.
No, it's about accepting the responsibility that comes with that knowledge. The responsibility for critical thinking, for ethical application, for understanding the potential consequences of every decision within that complex framework.
The playbook is detailed, but the choices remain deeply human, requiring both intellectual mastery and moral courage.
Well said, a powerful challenge inherent in command.
A powerful thought indeed. That's all the time we have for this deep dive into the art and science of advanced doctrine. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Until next time.